Welcome back to Pulse of the Planet, bringing you the latest news from around the world. The morning of September 15, 2025, began like any other Tuesday, calm, predictable, and full of promise. People in cities across the globe woke up to the familiar routines of daily life, unaware that everything was about to change in an instant. In London, New York, and Tokyo, daily routines were shattered by a single chilling news alert: war declared in Middle East. The message flashed across screens in dozens of languages, its urgency impossible to ignore. Panic swept across continents as people stared at their phones, the ordinary rhythm of life instantly broken. The world seemed to hold its breath as the news spread from one person to the next, disbelief turning quickly to fear. In London's financial district, traders watched markets plunge into chaos. The numbers on the screens tumbled, erasing billions in moments as uncertainty gripped the global economy. News anchors in Paris and Berlin interrupted broadcasts to show images of military convoys and angry crowds. The world's attention was suddenly fixed on the Middle East as speculation and rumors swirled. The words Qatar, Israel, and war echoed everywhere, fueling a sense of dread. Headlines blared from every device, and the uncertainty only grew with each new update. For a generation used to distant conflicts, this felt dangerously close, an escalation that could spiral out of control. Suddenly, the idea of war was no longer something that happened far away. It was at everyone's doorstep. Families paused on their way to school, calling loved ones in fear. Parents clutched their children's hands a little tighter, uncertain what the day would bring. The lack of clear information only deepened the anxiety. People searched desperately for answers, but clarity was nowhere to be found. Across capitals from Washington to Moscow, the same question lingered. Was the world on the brink of war? Diplomats and citizens alike waited for any sign of hope or reassurance. The shock was immediate and raw, unfiltered by context or explanation. In that moment, the world felt smaller, more fragile than ever before. Governments scrambled for answers as the story spread like wildfire. Emergency meetings were called and leaders faced the cameras with grave expressions, offering little comfort. Conversations everywhere revolved around the looming threat. Friends, colleagues, and strangers alike shared their fears, searching for meaning in the chaos. For a few terrifying hours, daily concerns vanished, replaced by a shared sense of impending doom. The world seemed to stand still, united in uncertainty. The world was united not by hope, but by fear. Across continents and cultures, people watched the same headlines, feeling the same dread. The day had barely begun, but it already felt historic, for all the wrong reasons. The sense of history unfolding was unmistakable, and no one knew what the next hour would bring. The world watched, waited, and feared what might come next. In every corner of the globe, people braced themselves for the unknown, hoping for peace, but preparing for the worst. The panic wasn't triggered by official declarations, nor by the sound of sirens or the sight of soldiers in the streets. Instead, it was ignited by the relentless machinery of modern media, a force that never sleeps and never waits for confirmation. It all began with a single, misinterpreted report from a regional news agency, one that claimed Qatar and its allies had declared war on Israel, a statement that was never actually made. Within minutes, global networks picked up the story, amplifying it across continents, while social media algorithms spread it like wildfire, reaching millions in the blink of an eye. Old videos of missile launches and military convoys, some from years past, resurfaced and were presented as if they were breaking news from the front lines. Headlines screamed of World War III, blurring the line between fact and fiction, and fueling a sense of dread that spread faster than any official statement could. News channels aired unverified images, their brief disclaimers drowned out by the urgency of the moment and the hunger for updates. The digital storm created a feedback loop. Public panic fueled media speculation, and media speculation in turn intensified public panic, creating a cycle that was hard to break. Experts debated the consequences of a war that hadn't started, adding layers of fear and uncertainty to an already volatile situation. The media wasn't just reporting the story, it was actively shaping it, influencing perceptions and decisions in real time. In reality, the so-called declaration of war was a phantom, born from haste, misinterpretation, and the pressure to be first, rather than accurate. The Doha summit had produced a strong statement, but there was no call to arms, no mobilization, just words, twisted by the echo chamber of the digital age. Yet the damage was done, exposing the fragility of our information ecosystem, and how easily trust can be shattered in a hyper-connected world. In the race for clicks and attention, context and verification became casualties, sacrificed for speed and sensationalism. The world was pushed to the edge not by bombs or bullets but by words and pixels, by the power of information and the peril of misinformation. In the 21st century, the first casualty of crisis is often the truth, a truth that can be lost in the noise before anyone even realizes it's gone. The roots of the crisis stretched back a week, as tensions simmered beneath the surface of the Gulf. Political analysts had warned of a growing unease, but few could have predicted the scale of what was about to unfold. It all erupted with a shocking airstrike in Doha, a city unaccustomed to the violence that has scarred so many of its neighbors. On September 9th, an Israeli airstrike struck a building in Qatar's capital, targeting high-ranking Hamas officials who had sought refuge there. The attack sent shockwaves through the city, leaving residents in disbelief. The operation killed 5 Hamas members and a Qatari security officer, crossing a line never crossed before in the Gulf. The loss was felt deeply both by the families and the nation. It was Israel's first public military action on Qatari soil, shattering a delicate diplomatic balance that had held for years and sending shockwaves through international corridors of power. Qatar, long a mediator in the region, was humiliated and furious. The government's outrage was matched only by the public's disbelief and anger. The strike was seen as a direct challenge to Qatar's sovereignty and a blow to the peace process, sparking protests and urgent diplomatic talks across the Arab world. The Hamas officials had reportedly been discussing a US-backed ceasefire, hoping to broker a fragile peace in a region long plagued by conflict. The attack ignited anger across the Arab world and set the stage for an emergency summit as leaders scrambled to respond to the escalating crisis. The world's attention would soon be captured by false reports of war, but the real crisis began in the ruins of Doha, where uncertainty and fear gripped the population. The explosion fundamentally changed the rules of the game in the Middle East, forcing every nation to reconsider its alliances and strategies. It was the true spark that lit the fuse, setting off a chain reaction that would reverberate far beyond the Gulf and altering the course of history in the region. The Israeli strike in Doha blindsided the United States. America's largest Middle East base, Al Udeid, sits just outside Doha, yet the Trump administration received no warning. President Trump learned of the attack only after it happened, a diplomatic shock for Washington. The US was forced to balance its alliance with Israel against its strategic partnership with Qatar. Trump issued a rare public rebuke of Israel, warning that bombing Qatar undermined both nations' interests. Secretary of State Marco Rubio rushed to the region, scrambling to contain the fallout. The incident exposed a growing rift between the US and Israel, as Netanyahu insisted the strike was an independent decision. America found itself sidelined, struggling to manage alliances as old dynamics shifted. The surprise strike signaled a new, uncertain era in the Middle East. In response, the Arab League convened an emergency summit in Doha. Leaders from across the Arab and Muslim world gathered, united in anger. Qatar's emir condemned the Israeli attack as a grave violation, echoed by leaders from Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Iran. The summit's outcome was not war, but a powerful message, a reassessment of all ties with Israel and a warning of possible joint military action if Israel escalated further. The Gulf Cooperation Council pledged to explore military options, a statement twisted by the media into a declaration of war. In reality, it was a diplomatic warning shot, a new line in the sand. The summit showed unprecedented unity among Arab and Muslim nations. The era of tolerating unilateral Israeli actions was over. No armies mobilized, but the political landscape had shifted. The Summit of Fury marked a turning point. As the Doha summit condemned its actions, Israel stood firm. Prime Minister Netanyahu doubled down, vowing to pursue Hamas leaders anywhere, regardless of borders. On the same day, Israel launched new airstrikes in Gaza and southern Lebanon, killing dozens and raising fears of wider conflict. Netanyahu warned of unilateral action against any country recognizing Palestinian statehood, inflaming tensions with Europe. Israel's defiance isolated it diplomatically but signaled it would not be deterred by regional or global pressure. The simultaneous military actions painted a picture of a nation on a war footing. Israel's stance made diplomatic efforts nearly impossible. While the world tried to pull back from the brink, Israel seemed determined to push forward. The false reports of war triggered a global economic shockwave. Oil prices spiked 12% overnight as traders feared supply disruptions. Gasoline prices soared, threatening higher costs for families and businesses worldwide. Stock markets plunged, wiping out billions in value within hours. Panic was so intense that some exchanges considered halting trading. Even after the truth emerged, the economic damage lingered. The crisis revealed how vulnerable the global economy is to geopolitical shocks and misinformation. A rumor in one region can empty bank accounts around the world. As September 15th ended, the world exhaled. There was no war, only a severe diplomatic crisis amplified by misinformation. The day revealed the dangers of misunderstanding and rapid escalation in a hyper-connected world. The Israeli airstrike was real, but the media storm turned it into something far more terrifying. A diplomatic statement became a phantom call to arms, exposing the fragility of peace in the Middle East. The crisis showed how easily alliances can be strained and how quickly fear can spread. Though war was averted, the fault lines remain. The events serve as a warning. In an age of instant communication, clarity and caution are vital. Sudden events mixed with fear can shake global stability. The world's shared panic should remind us to communicate clearly and pull back from the brink. Only by understanding each other can we avoid disaster in the future.